The dark expanse of space stretched endlessly, filled with stars and strange worlds. The galaxy was a vast place, full of powerful empires, advanced civilizations, and ancient technologies. But even in a galaxy so full of life, some things were still left to drift in the void, forgotten by time. One such thing was a ship, no longer of any value, abandoned by its creators, and left to float aimlessly in space. This ship, which the Galactic Council referred to as a floating coffin, was a remnant of an ancient war, a relic of a time when the galaxy was filled with conflict and chaos. Its hull was scared, its weapons useless, and its engines long dead. No one wanted it, not the Zorathi, not the Lurian Collective, and certainly not the Vathri Dominion. It was a ship no one could use, a ship no one could fix, or so the galaxy believed. The Galactic Council had called upon humanity to take the ship. They saw it as a task for the newly emerged species, a test of their ability to handle something that was already beyond hope. "You humans are good at surviving," they had said. "Maybe you can salvage something useful out of this wreck." The humans, however, had something the others didn't: a relentless drive to push forward. No matter how impossible the odds, they had always found a way to survive and thrive. And this ship, this floating coffin, was no exception. When the ship was finally brought to Earth's orbit, it appeared even worse than expected. Its exterior was battered and corroded from years of drifting through the cold, hostile space. The metal was rusted, the paint was chipped, and there were holes in the hull from unknown impacts. It looked as though it had been abandoned for centuries, with no one left to care for it. Yet the humans did not share the same doubts as the rest of the galaxy. They saw potential where others saw nothing but ruin. Engineers, scientists, and military personnel gathered around the vessel, eager to begin work. As they approached it, a deep hum filled the air, unseen but felt. The ship had been waiting for them, waiting for someone to breathe life back into its hollowed shell. "The only thing that's broken here is the spirit of the species that left it behind," one engineer muttered, inspecting the ship's outer casing. He smiled to himself, his eyes filled with determination. "Let's see what we can do." The first few days were filled with a deep silence. The workers slowly began to assess the damage. Inside the ship, the air was stale, and the lights flickered weakly. Most of the ship's systems were offline, and many of the control panels were dead. But the humans weren't discouraged. They started with the engines. The ship had two massive propulsion systems, but they were ancient, non-functional relics from a long-lost civilization. To an untrained eye, they seemed hopeless. But to the humans, it was another challenge, another puzzle to solve. Within hours, a team of engineers started disassembling the engines, uncovering technology that had been buried under layers of dust and age. Some of the tools they used were rudimentary, but the human mind was anything but. They worked tirelessly, with no thought of rest. They didn't care if the technology was old or broken. They just cared about one thing: fixing it. As the days turned into weeks, the first signs of success began to show. The engines, once dead and still, now hummed to life. The first flickers of power surged through the ship's veins, bringing it back from the brink of total destruction. The ship had once been designed for war, a deadly vessel meant to destroy and conquer. But now, it was a husk, an empty shell, waiting for someone to give it purpose again. And the humans were just the species to do it. There were challenges. The shields were down. The weapon systems were a mess. The internal systems were a tangle of wires and broken circuits. But as each problem arose, the humans found a way to fix it. They were stubborn, determined, and inventive. One by one, the systems began to come back online. First the power grid, then life support. The control panels, once blank, flickered with activity as humans worked in shifts to restore functionality. They were meticulous, never rushing, always taking the time to make sure everything was just right. Weeks later, the ship, once considered a hopeless wreck, was becoming something else entirely. Its shape was still the same, large, imposing, and intimidating. But now it was starting to hum with the promise of something more. The engine roar could be heard in the depths of the ship, and the faint vibrations told those aboard that the vessel was alive. But no one knew yet what it was truly capable of. The galaxy had underestimated humanity's ability to rebuild, to breathe new life into something others had discarded. The alien civilizations that had abandoned the ship never saw this coming. They never thought the humans could take this floating coffin and turn it into something far worse than they ever imagined. As the final repairs were made and the ship came closer to full functionality, the humans looked at each other with pride. The ship was no longer just a broken vessel. It was their ship now. And they had big plans for it. Soon, the galaxy would find out just how far humanity was willing to go. The first whispers of fear began to stir among the galaxy's leaders. They knew something was coming. The humans had taken a dead ship and turned it into something more. But what? The galaxy would soon know, and nothing would be the same again. The ship, once a relic of destruction, was now humming with a quiet, ominous energy. The humans had poured everything they had into reviving it. Now, the final stages of its transformation were underway. The project had been grueling. Day after day, engineers and technicians worked in the shadow of this enormous, twisted hulk, fixing it piece by piece. For the human race, this wasn't just about repair. This was about proving a point. No one had believed they could do it. No one thought humanity had the skill to make this derelict vessel into something formidable again. But as the days went on, it became clear to those aboard that the impossible was within reach. Inside the main control room, Captain Alina Roswell stood before a massive bank of holographic screens. The ship was nearly ready for launch. The human-designed systems now blinked with steady, reliable lights. The internal communication systems were back online, and the navigation computers had been calibrated with remarkable precision. She adjusted a dial on the console in front of her and watched as the ship's central reactor slowly powered up. The walls of the control room vibrated as the ship's heart started beating again. "Almost there," Captain Roswell murmured, her eyes glinting with a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. The room was filled with the sounds of engineers talking and monitors beeping, but the energy was electric. They were making history. They were proving their worth. Humanity had been exiled to the fringes of the galaxy, treated like a species of no consequence. The more powerful empires had long dismissed them as insignificant. Yet here they were, on the brink of creating something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy, something that could no longer be ignored. As she glanced over her shoulder, one of her senior engineers, Lieutenant Marcus Shaw, approached her with a data pad. His face was tired, but there was an undeniable spark in his eyes. "Captain, we've got the weapons systems online," he said, his voice low. "The main artillery is fully functional. The long-range cannons are recalibrated, and the eye targeting system is running its final diagnostic check. If we fire, we won't miss." Alina's heart skipped a beat. She turned to face him, her lips curling into a smile of satisfaction. "Good. But let's make sure everything is ready before we make a move. This ship is no longer just a war machine. It's a message." Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of her words. The ship, once a tool of destruction, had now become a symbol of defiance. The galaxy had laughed at humanity's ambitions. They had discarded this vessel as a broken relic, a useless piece of junk. But humanity had a way of turning things around. If anything, this ship, this floating coffin, would show the galaxy that the human race was far from finished. In the depths of the ship, beneath layers of steel and energy shields, a small group of military officers was preparing for something even more dangerous. They had been working quietly in the background, training and strategizing for the moment this ship would be ready to deploy. Admiral Lucas Braddock, the highest-ranking officer on the project, had been overseeing the military operations since the beginning. He had seen the potential in this ship before anyone else had. The other species of the galaxy had underestimated humanity's ingenuity and grit. The time for peaceful diplomacy was over. Humanity was about to make its presence known. Braddock stood at the head of the military operations room, his arms crossed, as he gazed at the holographic display in front of him. His eyes scanned the fleet of warships, the coordinates of their targets, and the timelines for the operation. "Once we launch this ship, there's no turning back," he said, his voice stern, though his heart raced with anticipation. "This will send a message to every species in the galaxy. We're not here to negotiate. We're here to win." The rest of the crew nodded in agreement, knowing that this would be the defining moment of their lives. They were no longer just defending Earth. They were about to enter the galactic stage and show everyone that humanity had a place among the stars. Captain Roswell entered the military operations room, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. "We're ready," she said, her voice filled with purpose. "Time to let the galaxy know that humanity is here to stay. Prepare for launch." The crew worked with incredible precision, their movements synchronized like a well-oiled machine. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. On the bridge, Captain Roswell took her seat in the command chair. She looked around at the faces of her crew, those who had poured their sweat, blood, and time into this project, and a feeling of pride filled her chest. The ship that was once deemed useless was now a symbol of human strength, a tool of unmatched power. Humanity had turned it into something the galaxy had never seen before. As the countdown reached 0, the lights on the ship flared brighter, the thrusters roared to life, and the ship shuddered as it began to move. It was slow at first, as if waking up from a long, restless slumber. But soon, the ship was moving faster, its energy growing stronger with every passing second. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's time had come. "Let's show them who we are," Captain Roswell said, her voice steady. "Let's make sure they never forget." With that, the floating coffin, now transformed into a vessel of unimaginable power, set its course, and the galaxy braced for impact. As the ship began to cruise through the vastness of space, its new engines roared to life, propelling it forward with incredible power. The crew aboard the ship could feel the vibrations in the walls, a constant reminder that they were on the edge of something dangerous, something revolutionary. This wasn't just a ship. It was a statement. Captain Alina Roswell stood in front of the main viewport, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. She knew what they had built, and she understood what it meant. The galactic powers would soon learn that humanity wasn't just a nuisance. They were a force to be reckoned with. "Captain," Marcus Shaw's voice broke through her thoughts. "We've received a transmission from Fleet Command. It's about the first target." Alina turned around, her expression serious. "Put it through," she said, her voice steady, though she could feel a surge of excitement in her veins. A holographic image of Admiral Braddock appeared in the center of the room. His face was stern, and the lines around his eyes showed the weight of the mission they were about to undertake. "The target is a high-ranking council ship from the Volrith Empire," Braddock explained. "They've been an obstacle in our efforts to establish peace in this sector. Their fleet has been blocking our supply routes for far too long. It's time they learn what happens when they challenge humanity." Alina nodded. "Understood. Let's make sure the galaxy remembers this." The transmission cut out, and the crew resumed their positions. Every eye in the room was focused on the ship's console as the weapons systems came online with a soft hum. The long-range cannons were primed, their targeting systems locking onto the enemy ship. There was no room for error. This was their first strike, and it had to be perfect. The Volrith Empire was known for its intimidating fleet. The ship they had chosen as the first target was heavily armed, capable of causing mass destruction. It was a perfect example of the kind of threat humanity had been facing since they were exiled to the edges of the galaxy. The Volrith had always considered themselves the dominant power, but they had never encountered the kind of power the humans now possessed. As the floating coffin moved through the cold void of space, The Volrith ship loomed large in their viewfinder. The Volrith Empire's flagship was massive, its sleek hull gleaming in the dark expanse. It was a symbol of power, arrogance, and control. But to the humans, it was just another target. "Captain," Marcus Shaw's voice rang out again. "We're in range." Alina's fingers hovered above the control panel, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't hesitate. "Fire." The ship shook as the main artillery fired. A deafening blast of energy erupted from the long-range cannons, shooting out like a bolt of lightning toward the enemy vessel. The energy beam was so powerful that it lit up the surrounding space, casting a shadow across the galaxy. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. The Volrith ship didn't move. It didn't try to defend itself. It was too late for that. The energy beam struck the Volrith ship dead center, piercing its hull with a violent explosion that rocked the flagship. The shockwave sent ripples through the void, sending smaller ships from the Volrith fleet scattering in all directions. "Direct hit," Marcus shouted, his voice filled with awe. "They're disabled, Captain. The flagship is crippled." Alina let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her eyes never left the viewport as the Volrith ship staggered and began to drift in space, its once proud form now falling apart at the seams. It was clear the enemy was no longer in control. But that wasn't the end of it. The crew of the floating coffin knew there would be more enemies to come. This was only the first target. There were countless others who had underestimated humanity. "Target is neutralized, Captain," Marcus confirmed, but his voice was filled with something more than just triumph. It was a sense of finality. Humanity had sent a clear message. "Prepare for the next phase," Alina said, her voice calm yet commanding. "The galaxy needs to understand. We won't stop here." As the crew continued their work, the ship turned its course, moving toward its next mission. They knew that one battle wouldn't be enough. It was just the beginning. This was only the first step in showing the galaxy that humanity had not only survived, it had adapted, evolved, and now it was ready to dominate. Out in the void, far beyond the reach of the Volrith Empire's remaining forces, a new order was being forged. Humanity, once the underdog, had proven itself capable of the impossible. The floating coffin had been their weapon of rebirth, a symbol of their power. And now, as they left the wreckage of the Volrith flagship behind, they knew that nothing could stop them. They had made their mark. The crew of the floating coffin watched as the Volrith flagship began to break apart, its engines sputtering as debris scattered in the cold vacuum of space. Yet, despite the triumph, there was a quiet unease that hung over the ship's command center. They had dealt a devastating blow to their enemies, but no one could shake the feeling that this was far from over. Captain Alina Roswell stood at the forefront, her hands clasped behind her back. Her sharp eyes scanned the data flowing across the screens before her, each piece of information confirming what she had feared. They had made a bold move by attacking the Volrith Empire, but the consequences were already unfolding. Other factions in the galaxy would be watching, and they wouldn't take kindly to humans wielding such power. "Captain, we're receiving a message." Marcus Shaw's voice broke her focus. His tone was tense, a clear indication that this wasn't just a standard transmission. "Put it through," Alina ordered. The image of a tall reptilian figure appeared on the screen. His eyes glowed with a menacing red hue, and his sharp fangs were visible as he spoke in a low, gravelly voice. "I am Zikarn of the Xanthar Dominion," the alien hissed. "We have seen what you've done, human. The destruction you've wrought upon the Volrith Empire is only the beginning of what you will face." Alina's gaze never faltered. She had been expecting this. No, perhaps even hoping for it. A challenge. "You must be mistaken," she said calmly. "We don't seek war with your people, Zikarn. But if you wish to start one, we'll be ready." The Xanthar's cold laugh filled the room. "You think yourself ready for the consequences of your actions. You humans have no idea what you've just unleashed." Before Alina could respond, the transmission ended abruptly. She knew the threat was real. The galaxy wasn't just a place of competing empires. It was a powder keg waiting for the right spark to set it off. And humanity had just lit the fuse. Outside the ship, the vastness of space stretched endlessly. Stars twinkled faintly in the distance, like distant memories of a time when humanity had been powerless. But now, in the captain's chair, Alina knew better. They had the power to change the fate of the galaxy, and if it meant fighting for it, so be it. "Captain," said Shaw, looking at his console with concern, "there's something strange on our radar. It's too far out to identify, but it's coming this way." Alina didn't look surprised. In fact, she had been expecting this. "What's the distance?" "Approximately 4 light years," Marcus replied, his fingers flying over the controls to scan the object more thoroughly. "It's moving fast. Too fast for anything we've seen before. Whatever it is, it's headed straight for us." "Prepare the ship for possible combat," Alina ordered, "and alert the rest of the crew. We might have company sooner than expected." As the crew moved into action, preparing for what was to come, Alina stood at the command center, her mind racing. She had anticipated retaliation from the Volrith Empire, but this new threat was unlike anything they had prepared for. The Xanthar Dominion, a species she had heard little about but knew to be merciless, now appeared to be watching their every move. And then there was the mysterious object, now heading toward them with alarming speed. For the first time since they had set out on this journey, Captain Alina Roswell felt a chill down her spine. The threat that loomed wasn't just external, it was the unknown. They had unlocked the door to an era of galactic power, but what lay beyond that door? "Captain," Marcus said, his voice shaking slightly, "the object, it's accelerating. We won't be able to avoid it at this rate." Alina's fingers tightened around the edge of the console. There was no time to think, only time to act. The mysterious object, whatever it was, would soon be within range. It was clear that they had just entered into a new dangerous phase of their mission. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," Alina ordered. "We won't let anyone or anything stand in our way." As the ship's crew braced for impact, they knew one thing for certain. This was no longer just a fight for survival. It was a battle for the future of humanity. And if anyone doubted their resolve, they would soon learn that the humans aboard the floating coffin were not just survivors. They were conquerors. The crew of the Cosmic Revenant, humanity's warship, worked in synchrony, their movements sharp and purposeful. The ship's defensive shields hummed with power, and its weapon systems were primed, ready to defend the ship from whatever unknown threat was on its way. Captain Alina Roswell stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the screens as the mysterious object drew closer. "We should be within range in a few minutes," Marcus Shaw, the ship's weapons officer, said, his voice tense. "I don't like this, Captain. The way it's moving. It's like it's tracking us." Alina nodded, her mind racing. The object on their radar had continued to accelerate since its first detection. It was closing in with a speed that was almost impossible to fathom. There was no ship in known space capable of moving this fast, and no conventional technology that could explain it. The crew's hearts pounded in their chests, but Alina remained calm, at least on the outside. "Whatever it is, we need to be ready," she said, her voice firm. "All crew members, report to stations. We are about to face something we've never encountered before." The ship's hull vibrated, and the sound of metal groaning filled the command center. Alina felt a shift in the air, as though the very fabric of space had changed around them. She turned to Shaw, who was staring intently at his screen. "It's slowing down," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. It's not just any object, Captain. It's a ship, and it's coming straight for us. But this is not any ship I've ever seen. It's made of something different." Before Alina could respond, the alarm systems blared, and the bridge was bathed in a blood-red light. The unidentified ship had entered firing range, and it didn't take long for the crew to realize that the threat was very real. The object was now close enough for them to see with the naked eye, an enormous craft, sleek and alien, its surface shimmering with an energy that made the hairs on the back of Alina's neck stand up. "Captain, we've been hailed," the communications officer, Lieutenant Kara Drake, said, her hands flying over the controls. Alina took a deep breath, her eyes narrowing. This wasn't just a random encounter anymore. They were being contacted by the unknown, and she had no idea whether it was an invitation to negotiate or a death sentence. "Put it through," Alina commanded. The screen flickered for a moment before an alien face appeared, one unlike any the humans had ever seen. It was a creature with translucent, almost ethereal skin, and its eyes glowed a bright blue, as though filled with cosmic energy. Its voice resonated in their minds, bypassing any need for translation. "Human, you are bold, but foolish. You have awakened forces far beyond your understanding." The voice was cold, and there was a weight to it that sent a chill through the crew. The being on the screen was not just any alien. It was something ancient, something powerful, and its tone made it clear that it was not here to negotiate. "We were given nothing but a broken ship," Alina said, standing tall and unwavering. "We turned it into something far more powerful than you can imagine. If you've come to challenge us, then I suggest you prepare yourself for the consequences." The alien's eyes flashed with an intensity that sent a wave of tension across the bridge. "You think your primitive technology can stand against the power of the ancients. You do not know what you are dealing with." Before Alina could respond, the alien ship began to shift, its form altering and morphing as though it was preparing for some kind of assault. The energy readings on the sensors spiked, and Shaw immediately began preparing the ship's defenses. "Captain, whatever the ship is, it's not just armed. It's alive. We're dealing with something that we can't even begin to comprehend," Shaw said, his voice tense. "We need to make a decision now." Alina took one final look at the alien on the screen, her mind racing. There was no retreat, no surrender. They had come too far, and humanity's future had already been set in motion. The galaxy had learned the cost of underestimating humanity, but this was something new, something far more dangerous. "Prepare to engage," Alina ordered, her voice strong and resolute. "Let's show them what we've become." As the cosmic revenant powered up its engines and weapon systems, the atmosphere on the bridge was thick with anticipation. The crew had never faced anything like this before. This alien ship, with its strange, shifting form and seemingly limitless power, represented a new chapter in their story, one where humanity's resolve would be tested like never before. The battle ahead was uncertain, but Alina and her crew were ready. They would not back down. They would not allow anyone to take from them the power they had fought so hard to claim. And as the first volley of energy blasts fired from the cosmic revenant, the galaxy held its breath. The sound of alarms filled the cosmic revenant, a deep, haunting tone that reverberated throughout the entire ship. The crew moved swiftly, expertly, as they had trained for countless hours. The alien vessel hovered just outside their firing range, its sleek alien design shimmering with an eerie energy. "Shields at maximum, Captain," Shaw called from the weapons station. "Prepare for incoming fire." The bridge trembled as the ship's engines powered up, sending the cosmic revenant into motion. Alina could feel her pulse quicken, but she forced herself to remain calm. She knew the stakes. The galaxy had seen humanity as weak, fragile, and unworthy of the stars. Now they had to show them what true strength looked like. "Fire when ready," she ordered, her voice steady. The first blast from the cosmic revenant tore through space, a beam of pure energy that cut through the blackness like a hot knife through butter. But as the shot connected with the alien ship's shields, it exploded in a burst of sparks, barely leaving a mark on the powerful vessel. "Captain, their shields are far stronger than anything we've ever encountered," Shaw shouted. "It's absorbing our fire like nothing we've seen before." Alina gritted her teeth. They were fighting an opponent unlike any other. But humanity had always thrived under pressure. She turned to Kara, the communications officer, whose hands were flying across the control panel. "Get me a direct line to the enemy ship," Alina said. "If they think they can just walk all over us, they have another thing coming." Kara nodded, and within moments, the image of the alien leader appeared on the main screen again. Its cold, calculating eyes stared down at the crew of the Cosmic Revenant. "You are fools," the alien said, its voice ringing in their minds. "Your weapons are nothing to us. This is your end." Alina felt the anger flare within her. This alien thought it could just destroy them, wipe them out with a single command. But it didn't understand humanity. It didn't know what it meant to fight for survival, for everything they had worked for. "We don't die easily," Alina shot back. "And we don't take orders from anyone." Before the alien could respond, the Cosmic Revenant fired again. This time, the shot was more strategic, aimed at the alien ship's power core. The explosion rocked the enemy ship, sending shockwaves through space. But even that didn't seem to be enough. The alien vessel absorbed the blast once again, only slightly damaged. "How is this possible?" Shaw muttered, eyes wide with disbelief. "Their shields are adapting to our weapons." The crew was silent for a moment, each person grappling with the gravity of the situation. They were up against something beyond their understanding. Yet, one thing was clear. They had to fight, no matter what. "Change tactics," Alina ordered, a spark of inspiration lighting up her mind. "Fire on their engines. Disable their mobility." Shaw didn't hesitate, his fingers flying over the controls as the Cosmic Revenant adjusted its weapons systems. The next shot was different. Instead of aiming for the shields, it targeted the alien vessel's engines. A brilliant flash erupted from the impact point, and for a split second, it seemed like the ship's engines would give way. But the alien craft reacted quickly, its hull shifting and morphing, repairing itself almost instantly. "It's healing itself," Shaw exclaimed, his voice filled with awe and terror. "We're not even putting a dent in it." The alien's response came not through words but in action. Without warning, the enemy ship unleashed a devastating counterattack. A beam of raw energy shot out from its core, striking the Cosmic Revenant head-on. The ship shuddered violently as the blast collided with their shields, sending a jolt through the entire vessel. "Shields holding," Shaw reported, though his voice was strained. "But they're draining fast. We can't keep this up much longer." The tension in the air was palpable. Alina gripped the armrests of her chair, her knuckles turning white. This was not just a fight for survival. This was the first time humanity had ever been truly tested against a force that seemed unbeatable. And yet, in the face of impossible odds, Alina knew there was still hope. "Initiate evasive maneuvers," she ordered. "We're not going to win this with brute force alone." The Cosmic Revenant twisted through space, dodging the next wave of energy blasts. Shaw quickly reconfigured the weapon systems to fire in quick bursts rather than sustained shots, hoping that their speed and unpredictability would catch the alien ship off guard. And then, just as the crew was beginning to feel the weight of the battle, a new signal came through the communication channel. "Captain, it's another ship," Kara said, her voice a mix of shock and disbelief. "It's human." Alina's heart skipped a beat. Could it be possible? Could there be others out there, other human ships, waiting to join the fight? The possibility was both exhilarating and terrifying. A larger force could tip the scales, but at what cost? "Open the channel," Alina said, her voice steady. "Let's see who's out there." The image on the screen shifted, and a familiar face appeared, a face she hadn't seen in years. "Alina," said the voice of Commander Jackson, her old mentor. "We've got your back." Alina's eyes widened in surprise and relief. Jackson's fleet, along with several other human ships, had arrived, and they were prepared to fight. "We're not alone," Alina whispered under her breath, a renewed sense of hope flooding her heart. "Let's end this." As the new fleet of ships engaged the alien force, the Cosmic Revenant and its crew found themselves with a newfound strength, standing tall with allies at their side. The battle was far from over, but now humanity had a chance to show the galaxy just what they were capable of. The air on the Cosmic Revenant was thick with tension. The ship, now flanked by Commander Jackson's fleet and a dozen more human warships, surged forward toward the alien armada. The massive alien ship, the one that had been their nightmare, loomed in front of them, its dark silhouette like a shadow threatening to engulf them all. All ships, engage. Commander Jackson's voice boomed across the comms, his words igniting a fire within every human aboard. This was no longer just a mission. This was a war, and the stakes had never been higher. Alina stood at the helm, her hands gripped tightly to the controls. She could feel the hum of the engines beneath her feet as the Cosmic Revenant surged forward, energy shields flickering brightly as the ship tore through the vastness of space. "Captain, the enemy is deploying more ships," Shaw warned, his voice filled with urgency. "They're not going to make this easy for us." But Alina didn't flinch. The aliens had underestimated them before, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. Humanity had been forged in the fire of adversity. They were resilient, determined, and above all, adaptable. "We're not backing down," Alina said, her voice low but full of resolve. Humanity doesn't know the meaning of defeat. The first volley of fire from the alien ships slammed into their shields, rocking the Cosmic Revenant with powerful bursts of energy. The ship groaned under the pressure, but the shields held, barely. Alina felt the ships shudder beneath her feet, but she kept her focus. This was the moment, the time to prove themselves. "Shields are holding, Captain, but not for long," Shaw reported, his hands flying over the control panels as he worked furiously to maintain the ship's defenses. "We need to hit them hard, and we need to do it now." Alina nodded. It was time for their final strike. "Target their flagship's core," she commanded. "If we can take that down, the rest will fall." Shaw didn't need further explanation. He understood the plan perfectly. The Cosmic Revenant fired with deadly precision, sending blast after blast toward the heart of the enemy ship. The alien vessel responded in kind, unleashing its most devastating weapon. The entire ship shuddered, and a bright flash of light filled the viewport as the energy struck their shields. "Shields at 30%, Shaw shouted, his voice cracking with strain. "Don't let up," Alina barked. "We have to break their lines now." As the Cosmic Revenant danced through space, dodging enemy fire and returning with its own, the other human ships moved into position. The battle was chaotic, but the coordination between the fleets was flawless. Humanity was not just fighting back, it was fighting to win. Then, with a terrifying roar, the flagship of the alien fleet unleashed a final massive energy beam. It was aimed directly at the Cosmic Revenant. Alina watched, her heart racing as the beam closed in on them. There was no time to avoid it, no room for error. In that moment, everything seemed to slow. Alina saw the crew, each one determined, each one fighting for their families, their people, their home. They weren't just soldiers. They were the last line of defense for everything humanity had built. "Brace for impact," Alina shouted, but even as the words left her mouth, a strange calm washed over her. And then, just as the beam was about to hit, something extraordinary happened. The Cosmic Revenant's energy cores flared to life. The ship's weapon systems powered up like never before, and for a brief second, it seemed as if time itself stood still. "Captain, the ship's responding in ways we've never seen before," Shaw exclaimed, his voice thick with awe. "The energy core. It's like it's alive." Alina didn't have time to dwell on the anomaly. She knew they had one shot at survival, and it was now or never. The Cosmic Revenant launched its final barrage at the alien flagship. The energy blast was so powerful that it broke through the alien shields and penetrated deep into the heart of their ship. The flagship erupted in a massive explosion that shook the very stars themselves. The alien fleet was thrown into chaos. Without their leader, their flagship, the rest of the enemy ships began to falter. One by one, they began to retreat, their forces collapsing under the pressure of the human onslaught. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, the comms crackled to life. "Captain." Commander Jackson's voice was steady, but the relief in his tone was unmistakable. "The enemy is retreating. They're gone." Elena allowed herself a brief moment of stunned silence. It was over. Against all odds, humanity had won. The galaxy was safe. But more than that, humanity had proven its place among the stars. The cosmic revenant had gone from a floating coffin to the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. The aliens who had once dismissed them as weak had been forced to learn the hard way that humanity was a force to be reckoned with. As Elena looked around the bridge, her crew's faces illuminated by the stars outside, she knew that this was just the beginning. There was much more to explore, many more challenges to face, but they had shown that, no matter what, humanity would rise. And this victory would echo throughout the galaxy for centuries to come. "Prepare to set course for the next frontier," Elena ordered, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "The galaxy is ours to explore." And with that, humanity's journey among the stars truly began.